Hello and welcome to Free Hit, an FPL podcast. I'm your host, Chris, joined as always by my co-host, Jace. And Jace, it feels like last week was the longest international break ever. I don't know if you feel the same way, but these seem to just be getting worse and worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think historically, the November international break is always the longest because it's a bunch of bullshit games. And like it's the last one of the year. People back out, as we saw with like the entire England national team and all the yellow arrows or uh, yellow flags, I should say, by all of our FPL players. So yeah, I think it's just that time of the year where players want to preserve themselves for these upcoming fixtures to get them through to the end of the year, and then obviously prepare for all the other games that are going on, like the European fixtures and the FA Cup starting at the turn of the year. Everybody wants to be healthy, all that. So yeah, been a pretty shit 9-10 days of international football.
I hate that we have to stop the Premier League so that we can watch Germany beat Bosnia 7-0. Like, is this what we were all aspiring to, that we were all waiting for? Like, thank you, UEFA, for giving us Germany 7, Bosnia 0, because that is what I want to watch.
Or everybody collectively cheering San Marino to score a goal, right?
Right.
Like, you get all excited for this shit, or, I mean, even Mikel Antonio, he's had enough of it, clearly. I mean, he lost his passport. Yeah, I've used that excuse too. Dog ate my homework. Oh, my alarm didn't go off. I lost my passport. I can't go play. Sorry. Come on.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like the players are kind of over it. I honestly didn't watch much of these games, but the second half of the US-Jamaica game that I did watch, it did strike me as a friendly, even though it was technically a competitive match, which again begs the question with the number of fixtures that we have coming up in December as we approach Christmas. Like, this is kind of a specific run in the season with lots of matches. Like, why do we need to do this? It just seems like too much to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. Greedy football federations. I think that's the root of it all, and that's who we'll give our blame to this time.
Did you? I know you watched some of the U.S. game. Did you watch anybody else? Did you keep tabs on anybody that's FPL relevant or not FPL relevant?
Yeah, of course. Our boy Chris Wood kept up his form down under. I should say, got himself a goal, which was great. I'm pretty sure everybody on the England national team that dressed scored against 10-man Ireland, so that's good, I guess. Taylor Harwood-Bellis, though, scored his first international goal on his England debut, which was pretty cool. Did you know he's engaged to Roy Keane's daughter?
Yeah, didn't Roy Keane was like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is gonna work out. Something like that. Roy Keane, obviously being of Ireland.
Yeah, that was weird. I didn't know that. That's a weird fact. That I heard at halftime during that game, which I had to stream on the sketchiest of sites, because for some reason the England game, it was like what it was like some knockoff fucking, there's like Tubi or something I had to watch it on. I don't even know what Tubi is, but I don't know why these games they can't even make it easy for us to watch the games, Chris. Like, it's not only do we have to watch these boring ass games, they make it hard to go find the streams. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's how you know it's bullshit, and I feel like it also only makes things harder from an FPL perspective. We were just talking, and as soon as we got on the Zoom call before we started recording, you said, so, a lot of yellow flags, which I think is true, and I feel like I'm going to be on Twitter, or I guess now Blue Sky. That was the other thing that happened over the international break. Just like actually trying to figure out who's hurt and who's not, which, I'll reiterate, my favorite part of this game is figuring out who's actually injured and who's
actually gonna play. It's even harder now because there's so many yellow flags. Like, I don't know what's real and what's not. I'm guessing the one on Trent is real because it's orange, but all these other ones, Foden, Semenyo, and Mbeumo,
Saka, Palmer.
Yes.
Basically every midfielder.
Surely they're not all hurt, right? Like, I can't imagine. I'm sure they all just bitched out because they didn't want to go play fucking Ireland and Scotland or whoever they played.
Yeah, Palmer, I think, just withdrew, so I think he's totally fine. I will say Saka, if we remember, got injured and subbed off during the Chelsea game, so I feel like he's the one guy I'm looking at.
When isn't he limping? Come on. That
Yeah, I
guy's
think
always
he's
got a
fine.
yellow flag.
That's true. That's right. Arteta's his manager, so we'll get kind of like a clear answer as to whether he's playing or not. So it should be
Sure.
pretty straightforward. Why don't we switch back to game week 11, talk about our teams, and I'm curious about what you've been mulling over during the international break. So you want to take it away with Team Jace, 65 all out?
Yeah, 65 all in. Good run. I had 5 returns, so that was great. Not only 1, but 2 clean sheets, which was awesome. Virtually unheard of by my team to get a clean sheet point. I think that's probably true for most players this season. So, I was pretty pleased with that. Alexander-Arnold, it would have been 3 clean sheets, but he got yanked on, like, he got hurt in, like, the 20th minute. So that sucked. So I gotta figure out what to do with him. But 8 Nori, 6-pointer, Mazraoui, 8-pointer, Buemo, 5-pointer, Semenyo, blank, Salah, hauled. Obviously got the captain right, which is a huge
Yeah,
help.
that's huge.
Yeah,
Huge.
Foden, blank, again, gotta do something with him too. Holland scored, which is great. We've got a rare Chris Wood blank, and Jimenez got an assist. So I'm feeling pretty good about that team. Now, the team for this week, this upcoming week, I don't feel so good about. So I got to figure out what to do and who to get rid of. But right now, I've been trying to figure out what I'm going to do with Trent and Foden. Trent more urgent than Foden because Trent's got all of my budget tied up into him. So I might audible to maybe Virgil and stick with the Liverpool defense. I think he's the highest scoring defender in the game too, but I'm not sure yet. Same with Foden. I guess I can stick with him. He's got Spurs coming up if he's healthy, but then Liverpool. So now might be a good time to get off him. The Foden experiment clearly didn't work. Didn't return in any of the fixtures that he would have last year at least. Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton, blank, blank, blank. And then Tottenham and Liverpool next. So I might get off him and go to another premium mid and do a double premium swap here in the next few days.
If you were going to wildcard this week, how many players in your current team do you think would be in the wild card? I see, I think 8 Nori, Mazraoui, Bumo, Semenyo, Salah, potentially Raul, probably not Chris Wood, maybe Cunha instead, and then Holland probably make the wild card
Yeah.
team. Like of the two of us, I sold Holland. I've been gravitating more towards the 3 premium midfielder team, and you have a Holland and Salah team. And after reflecting over the break and absorbing a lot of FPL related content, I think I kind of like yours better at this point. I don't know. How would you kind of like assess based on where you're at?
Well, we can look at the ranks and we can see clearly who's got a better team. Because I think you're quite a few 100,000 ahead of me. But like I said, I don't hate my team. I've got some problems, but as you mentioned, as long as everybody's healthy, I mean, these are the players. This is the template that you'd want in a wild card team, right? Semenyo and Mbuemo are probably locks on most teams, along with Salah. Yeah. Probably trade Saka for Foden, and
or Palmer.
Downgrade Rodgers or Palmer. Yeah, exactly. Probably can afford. I can't afford either of them right now without making some moves. So there's that. I would probably, you're right, I would get off of Raul and Wood and replace one of them with King Cunha, and I'd probably keep Holland. So, yeah, the goalkeeper situation, not a good goalkeeper in the game, so less worried there at the moment. So, yeah, like I said, I like my team. I like Mazraoui. He's got Ipswich next. Finally got a clean sheet. I'm excited for this United team that's going to have. Yeah. They were flying under Ruud, Van Nistelrooy, and I think they'll continue that run of form now that they got rid of that boat anchor named Erik ten Hag. And by the way, I spent a lot of the international break in Amsterdam. He does that. I mean, he just does that place a disservice. He's a national tragedy. I'll go that far. Erik ten Hag, national tragedy. The Dutch people don't deserve that.
Yeah. Did you hear walking around kind of people in whispers, Den Haag.
No,
Like, what
I
was
tell you what, though, I had such a pleasant conversation with a gentleman who's a PSV supporter and how much he loved our Americans and Pepe and Tillman. And he had a conversation with Serginho Dest the week before I chatted with him and how much Dest was just loved being at the club and how cool of a person he was and how much he loved being on camera and stuff like that. So I did have a really pleasant American to Dutch PSV fan conversation, and that really made my week at the trade show.
And Ernie Stewart there, right?
Yeah,
Is there?
yep.
So that does feel like a nice feeder club for some of the American talent going to Europe, because you can go there, you're on a top team, you're not like Sargent, who's stuck on Norwich in the Premier League, never got the ball, right? It does seem like a nice developmental fit. This is not a USMNT podcast, but I am glad to hear.
That's true.
I am glad to hear that our guys.
Not yet. It's not yet. We could. I saw the rumors. Pulisic to Liverpool is what I'm hearing next.
Yeah.
He could be a great asset next season.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is it's time to transfer in Anthony. Is this the Anthony Mount double up that everybody's been talking about?
No. That's like on the worst team that's like worst team of the season candidate right there. I know the people on the FPL podcast were saying what their biggest mistakes were for the season. That would be like the biggest mistake of an FPL career, would be doubling up on Mount and Anthony.
I'm sure there are like a couple teams from early, last year or 2 years ago. I mean, like Mount was in some teams maybe around the same time Anthony was. So, yeah, Amram, it seems like I was doing some research, like mostly plays a 3-4-3, and that the outside wingers in the midfield are wingbacks. So Mazraoui and Dallo, I think, could feature well. The guy that we don't really know about yet is Bruno. Could be playing a little bit deeper in central midfield, or he could be playing kind of an inverted winger, cutting inside and playing balls off the wing. So we'll have to see on him. I'm not as into the Bruno Fernandes gold rush as some others. Let's see where he's playing first.
What a haul last week, though.
Yeah. I'd like to forget it happened, but yeah. I mean, for those who went there, like, fantastic. You've got basically 3 weeks of good United fixtures, then probably have to figure something out. But a lot of people that went Bruno now have money for Isak or Jackson, which like the premium teams don't really have. So could be something there.
Sure.
And lastly, drop the mic. And lastly, your team, you rolled a transfer.
Rolled a transfer.
Too,
so I've got two to use.
In the bank. Yeah,
two to the bank. Can take a hit if I need to, but I don't think I'll need to this week.
Nice. All right. We'll flip over to my team here. 63 all out. I don't even remember who the fuck I have, so let's go through it. Flecken in goal sucks. Raya on the bench also sucks. Mikolenko, Gabriel, and Aina, clean sheet from Mikolenko. Midfield of Mbumo, Captain Salah for 28 points, Cole Palmer with 2, Semenyo with 2, Son with 2. I'm so happy I did not captain Son against Ipswich. I had kind of built up to him as being the differential. Got cold feet based on his kind of expected minutes coming off a hamstring. And that would have been a massive swing between Son and Salah captaincy.
Not based on Spurs' propensity to lose a game to a winless team in the game before the international break, because it's happened like the last 6 international breaks in a row. It's almost impossible that it has happened as often as it has.
It's very Spursy. I will say, I think we're on to something, though, with this like Thursday to... Did they play Sunday or Saturday? I think they were Sunday early game. Yeah.
Thursday
like that, the late week European turnaround, both for Spurs and for Villa, it seems like has been really challenging this year.
Chris, I made like $200 betting that we were going to lose that game, and sure enough, I'm $200 richer.
Oh. Well, you can roll that onto the City game this week, I suppose.
I also bet on Brighton to win against City. So again, I think we got to find our new rule here. But yeah, not a gambling podcast either. Keep going.
Yeah. Forward, Mateus Cunha returned with 12 points after selling Holland, so that was huge for me. And then
Yeah.
Chris Wood with a 2-pointer. Still have Calvert-Lewin on the bench, still have Rico Lewis on the bench, and maybe Jacob Greaves will finally be back to getting 1-pointers. He's been out
Yeah.
for a while after the international break. So overall, feeling good. I think problems in my team are probably Son, Calvert-Lewin, and Rico Lewis. I think those are the three guys that right now I'm not happy to own.
Okay.
And then obviously like not having Holland is a gamble versus the triple premium midfield setup.
Yeah, and how many transfers you got?
One
One.
free.
One free.
I have as many as I want, but I
That's
can only
true.
do one for free.
Good point.
Yeah.
Why are you unhappy with Rico Lewis? I understand the other two, but I feel like he's one of the most consistent City defenders, at least him and Guardiola.
Yeah, I think just overall City team defense performance. They played well home Southampton and away to Bournemouth. Last game against Brighton, they allowed 2.29 XGC, and also just like eye test wise, the second half, they got spanked like a misbehaving child. I mean, it was pretty much all Brighton from 45 onward,
Yeah.
and Brighton came out in the first half, pressed like crazy, didn't seem to be working. Holland got his goal, and it seemed all but over. But second half, City just looked bad. So I feel like if you're going City defense, like Gvardiol is probably the pick, and honestly, not even for defense, but for goal contributions. I don't know. How do you see Rico Lewis? He's also up to 4.9. I'll add that in there too.
Yeah, I see him as maybe not so cheap now, but he was a cheap way into the City defense, and he plays. I know Pep did that whole thing where he said, "Yeah, Rico Lewis is the only person we can't bench," and then he benched him the next
benched
game
him
in
immediately.
typical Pep fashion. So you got to watch out for that. But outside of that, I mean, I thought he's played okay, and I think he's going to keep playing. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have a City defender. Granted, I don't know who you were planning on replacing him with or what you had in mind, but getting rid of Son and getting rid of Lewis, you've got some. Well, I guess you can only get rid of one this week, but there's some room there.
Yeah. I think Son and Calvert-Lewin would be the priorities. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think Rico Lewis is a great pick at this point. I also don't think he's like must transfer out, right? That would be kind of a luxury transfer to make in defense, since no one's scoring defender points other than you last week.
Okay, fair. Yeah, Calvert-Lewin is like one of those collective headaches. I was telling you on the FPL pod, everybody was saying like their biggest mistake was bringing in Calvert-Lewin and not Chris Wood or whatever. And they were all having a good laugh. I thought that was pretty funny because the entirety of FPL Twitter would probably agree with them.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. You've got Son away to Man City this week,
Yeah.
and you've got Calvert-Lewin home to Brentford, who has been playing like a very aggressive offensive style, high-scoring games. Of those two, who would you rather replace with a better asset this week?
Ooh, probably Calvert-Lewin. I still feel like, yeah. Well, I guess it depends on the options that you're going for, because who are you going to replace Calvert-Lewin with?
Yeah, well,
who would you go with if you swap Son? Who would you go with if you swap Calvert-Lewin? Who would you go with?
Yeah, I mean 1-to-1 replacements, right? So Son
Yeah.
is Saka is clearly. I already own Salah and Palmer, so
Yeah.
Saka is like clearly the other.
That's your
Premium mid.
midfield. Yeah.
Yep. And then Calvert-Lewin could be João Pedro, could be Evan Nielsen, could be any number of the high-performing kind of 6.0-ish forwards. I could also kind of restructure a little bit, like maybe Son goes to Bruno Fernandes, and that would enable Calvert-Lewin up to a Nick Jackson. I don't think I can quite get to Isak with that move, but those are a couple guys also on my mind this week. It's just, it's hard even, it's hard to keep Holland. It's hard even to get to the mid-price
Yeah.
forwards, it feels like, given how well the 6.0 bracket as a whole is performing right now. Like, even Jimenez and João Pedro, I think, are two of the best picks in the game at the moment.
Yeah, I don't hate the move to Bruno. I just don't know if that's too early or not, because we haven't seen an Almiron.
Haven't seen the new coach,
Yeah.
and as soon as that, like, he has 2 games, right, and then he's a
Yeah.
problem. So
Yeah. Yeah, good points. Stuff to mull over, which we can go right into if you want. Or
yeah, let's
yeah.
do it. Anywhere for the upcoming game week that
Fixtures to
you
target,
want to start?
Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take fixtures to target for 1,000, Alex.
Yeah, I think it's good. International breaks are always a good time to revisit the FDR.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there. So I've got the FDR, at least according to Fantasy Football Hub, up, which is not necessarily the perfect, all-knowing FDR. We know how these teams are playing, but gives us a good directional indicator. So the best fixtures from Game Week 12 through Game Week 18, which take us through the festive fixtures on the
Festive
26th.
fixtures. Yeah.
Woo! Arsenal, big fixture swing for them. Bournemouth, Newcastle, Brighton, Wolves. I'm going to include Chelsea. According to this, there's a little bit of a drop-off between the FDR of Wolves and Chelsea, but Chelsea have Leicester and Southampton in 2 of the next 3. They also have Brentford, Everton, and Fulham in this stretch. So of those teams, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Brighton, Wolves, Chelsea, where do you want to start? Who in this list is a must-own? Who are you most scared of? How are you getting these guys into your teams?
It's a good question. I think Arsenal is one that we just have to be a little weary of. We all made the move 2 international breaks ago, right? When they had easier fixtures, and they were like, okay, we're banking clean sheets, solid, Saka's going to haul, this, that, and the other, and it didn't happen, right? I think Saka had one good game in that fixture, but there wasn't a clean sheet in any of them. So be wary about the Arsenal fixtures. I may bring an Arsenal defender in for Trent. That being said, if I don't hear any news about his hamstring, and maybe go from Foden to Saka on my end. So that's my way into getting those of those fixtures. Arsenal are your stalwarts, right? Everybody's going to go to them. You're going to look at the 2 defenders and Saka. Bournemouth, Evanilson looking like he was going to get a price rise. If you need a cheaper forward, that's a good place you can go. If you want to get off Chris Wood, if you want to get off Raul, then yeah, you can go to Evanilson and the 9. If you've got money to spend, Isak I think is a great option in the forward spot, along with Anthony Gordon. Either of those 2, you can't go wrong depending on where your problems are in your team. I don't really know about Brighton. I'm not sure where you go outside of João Pedro. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on the Brighton squad.
I think Welbeck is still interesting, similar to Evanilson. He's in that 6.0 price bracket. I don't see Ferguson pushing him for minutes at all. So It's less about belief in Welbeck. It's more about price and fixtures, I think, in minutes. He still seems to provide a lot of value there for me. I think a Brighton defender, a Lewis Dunk, a Van Hecke, even Verbruggen, the keeper, if you're on wildcard, to me, also could be a reasonable pick. But their fixtures are much better, I think, from an attacking standpoint than a defensive standpoint. I did want to circle back on Arsenal because they're obviously the best team of this group, likely to score the most goals, likely to keep the most clean sheets of this set of teams. We'll see. When you say you're wary of Arsenal,
is
that attack? Is that defense, or is that just kind of like everybody in the
team?
Team?
It's both, right? I think it's been an interesting run of fixtures for them because everybody thought they were going to play so much better than they did. I mean, you can look at the table, right? And we can see where they're at based on where we expected them to be. But defense, big concern, right? You've got Raya as a goalkeeper.
Yeah, I'm doubled up still.
Yeah, you're doubled up still. I mean, are you? You're probably not much that concerned at this point because the fixtures have swung back, and you kind of plowed through that rough patch. But no, I just think everybody went to Arsenal defenders and Saka expecting them all to haul, and it never happened. So I think if history has taught us anything, it's just to be a little leery, right? Maybe you don't need 2 Arsenal defenders for this fixture run, right? Maybe you just need the one. Maybe you only need 2 Arsenal assets total. You don't need 3, right? That's all I'm saying is don't carve your whole team up to go get Arsenal assets because we saw what happens when people do that, or what can happen, I should say.
If you're a proponent of one defender, I think there's still a decent argument for 2 given the fixtures, but obviously the record to date has not borne that out, and they don't seem to be quite as good as last year, just even from the actual goals conceded as well as expected goals conceded per 90. Is there a second attacker? Like if you have one defender, you have Saka, like is Havertz worthy of consideration? It doesn't seem like anyone on the wing is. Odegaard just came back. Maybe he gets in the mix somewhere, but I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, I'm out on Havertz. The underlying numbers for me are not there for him. He's won like the least amount of aerial duels in like the entire league, which is troubling to me when you're like 6'7", like he is. I think there's an effort thing there. I just don't think his underlying metrics support doing that. I think if you have Saka and you have a defender, you've got good coverage for Arsenal's next 7 to 10 fixtures, right?
Yeah. So don't try and squeeze the third asset.
Yeah.
I think second defender, if anything, but to your point, like you don't need to rip up your team to make sure you have 3. In the same way, I think in game week 6, we felt like we have to wildcard to have 3 of these guys. I don't think that's true here.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think there's so many other options that we have available to us that are probably better, as well. So just not something I think you need to go cut your team up for.
Yeah. Speaking of Havertz in the mid-price forward bucket, I do want to talk about Isak versus Jackson. Isak plays obviously for Newcastle on penalties. He's scored, I think, in his last 4-ish fixtures to date, something like that. So impressive record thus far. Seems to be finding his groove, and he was in a lot of teams to start the season. Jackson, on the other hand, continues to be an XG monster yet again this year. A little bit cheaper than Isak. Chelsea have Leicester and Southampton in 12 and 14, but he does not have penalties and is on 4 yellow cards. So between those 2 guys, I think a lot of people are going to be in this decision bracket this week that are upgrading forward. Isak at 8.5 or Jackson at 7.9.
I'd take Isak over Jackson at the minute. I like Newcastle's form, and I like their fixtures coming up. And I think Isak has done a good job putting himself in spots to score, as we saw from the last game, that incredible ball by Gordon. So I would go Isak. Nothing against Jackson. I think I just have like a sour stomach on Jackson still, just because he's in that he's always been in that you could but you shouldn't bracket, and maybe that bias is getting in the way. But I'd go Isak. What about you?
Yeah, I think if I could afford it, I would go Isak. The 4 yellow cards for Jackson, I think, are a flag, and I do think the penalties is something you want to look for in a striker pick. I would also say I don't know if Callum Wilson is still doing anything there, but as the fixtures
is he still alive?
Yeah, I hope he's okay. Um, I could see some Nkunku rotation for Chelsea, especially as we start to have midweek Premier League games and the yellow card suspension as well. Whereas Isak, I think even midweek is probably pretty secure from a minutes standpoint. So I think if you can get there, I would go there. Jackson is you're almost comparing, is it worth 2 million to go to Jackson over Cunha, Evan Nielsen, João Pedro, Welbeck, like those guys within
Yeah.
these teams. Do you have a thought? Would you spend the extra 2 million for Jackson?
No, not in that situation. If you don't have Holland and you've got extra budget to spend, I think you can make an argument for it. But if you stuck with Holland, I think you've probably invested the money into a midfielder,
Yeah.
as we've discussed. So I just don't think it's worth the extra go there to go for Jackson. Yeah, I think we just, like I said, we're glutton for choices at this point for forwards, and you've got just as good options at much better pricing.
Yeah. I would consider it for just specifically because they have Leicester and Southampton in the next two. But I do think it depends on your like transfer position leverage. Like if you've got 3 frees right now, maybe you're more inclined to go for Jackson versus somebody like me that has 1 free. I don't think it makes sense to hit him in because again, you don't necessarily know how much game time he's getting versus the other guys that seem to be pretty nailed at this point.
Yeah, good point.
For what it's worth, between game week 12 and game week 18, FPL Review has Isak projected at 34.5 points and Nick Jackson projected at 29 points. So Isak is worth about 5 more points over that time period if you can get to him. They also have Havertz at 31, so slightly above Jackson, slightly below Isak for what it's worth. How about the budget forwards? I think we both really like Cunha from Wolves, but maybe if we think about Evan Nielsen, Welbeck, and Strand Larson, between those guys, I found myself gravitating towards Evan Nielsen of that group. I don't know about you, but per 90s look good. Scoring, he's 3 or 4 returns consecutively, and I want to say less than 2% ownership. Like to me, that seems like a good opportunity if you need a forward this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he missed that penalty and got kind of his he got his jitters, his whatever you want to call him out of the way, his yips out of the way, and I think he's found form now. So I think you're going to see a adjusted Premier League Evan Nielsen, however you say his name. So he's who I would gravitate towards as well, especially if you've already got Cunha and you reaped the rewards on taking that risk on him. So he's definitely who I would target next. I think. And what do you think? Would you go from Chris Wood to Evan Nielsen?
Not this week.
Not this week. Not next week.
Yeah. Chris Wood has home Ipswich next week. So I think if you have Chris Wood, you have to hold him for that. But then after that fixture, like Forest doesn't have a great run. So I think Bournemouth play Ipswich in game week 15. I think we'll want to check the deadline because that might be like the Sunday, Tuesday, or something like that. Like as the fixtures get congested. So that fixture may not end up being as good as it looks on paper right now. But that would be a nice one to have a double up on Semenyo and Evan Nielsen. The other guy I should have mentioned is obviously João Pedro, who we talked about earlier, currently at 5.4. Any thoughts on JP versus the other guys as well? I feel like for the price, he's kind of an unbelievable pick at this point.
Yeah, if he can stay, if the minutes don't become an issue and he stays healthy, stays consistent, absolutely. I think he was still kind of coming back from injury these last couple of weeks. He's kind of eased his way back into the 11. So I don't know that I would go for him this week, but I'd see what Brighton do against Bournemouth, and then definitely have him for the Southampton fixture if you want him then. But the fixtures you cannot deny are just unbelievable, right? All the promoted sides, right? Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, Crystal Palace, West Ham, Brentford. I mean, that's a great run for forwards. So definitely Uh, I would wait a week personally, see how he looks, see if he's starting, and then make your decision there. But I think maybe the only picks from Brighton right now, I mean, Matoma and the other guy, uh, the other winger, I forget what his name is.
Minta.
Minta, thank you. Not doing what we thought they would do. Maybe not as consistent as we thought they'd be. Not locks like Matoma was last season by any means, or 2 seasons ago, I should say. But yeah. Any other Brighton players that you're targeting?
I think defense you could look at with like Dunk or Verbruggen or Van Hecke, like just a solid 4 or 5. We did see before the break, Kadioglu, if you were getting really punty on a wild card or something like that. 6 points against Wolves in game week 9, and then a goal against Liverpool in game week 10, and was fairly attacking. Not secure from a minutes standpoint, so I don't think he's a pick. But again, if you were on a wild card and you wanted to take a much larger swing in defense, which I don't know why you would, but he's shown some attacking output early in the season.
Interesting.
Should we switch to the negative fixture swings here? There's a team I recognize on the bottom, Spurs.
Come on, those aren't that bad.
Those aren't that bad. In this group as well is Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, Everton, Southampton. Man United kind of sneaks in there towards the bottom. I'm also going to loop in Brentford as well after the next two, Everton away and Leicester home. Their fixtures turn as well. So there's a few like somewhat highly owned assets in this group. Spurs, Solanke and Porro. Nottingham Forest, a lot of people have Chris Wood. Everton, a lot of folks have Mikolenko. Man United, and then Brentford, Bumo as well. Do you have a thought or philosophy? Because I'm trying to think about this for Chris Wood too. Of like Chris Wood is a good pick, but I don't want to hold on to him for past performances. So like how much rope should we give guys like Chris Wood and Bumo when the fixtures turn, knowing that they are still good value for the price that they deliver?
I'll quote the great Wayne Gretzky here. You don't go where the puck is at, you go where it's gonna be, right? And I think you certainly don't go to Chris Wood right now, right? Because that's where the puck's at, or where it was. You got to go for where it's going to be. Who's the next Chris Wood, like we talked about on the last episode, and that goes for the owners too. I mean, great if you owned him for these last 4 or 5 fixtures, you really reap the rewards. But it's time to get off him. I think you've got the Ipswich fixture. I think, like you said, you hold them through the Ipswich fixture, but at that point, go to someone else who's got better fixture runs, like the forwards we talked about, like a João Pedro or Evanilson or Strand Larson or Cunha, whoever. Right? Go for the next one. I think people in FPL get a little too complacent with the template teams in the meta, and they don't try and get those next Chris Woods that we talked about, and that's where I think you make up all of your rank and in all your losses is finding those value players who are getting ready to pop.
Yeah, do you have a Chris Wood plan right now specifically? Like, are you gonna kind of ride it out, or are you look like me?
No, I'll get off him at the Ipswich fixture. I think I'll let him Ipswich at home in his form. Even Arsenal away, I'm not scared given their form. I may not play Chris Wood this week, but I will certainly play him next week, and then I'll look somewhere else. Probably one of the assets that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think same. Ipswich home. Then he has Man City away, Man United away, who we're expecting, I think, to be better defensively. Villa at home doesn't really concern me. Brentford away is actually pretty good, and then Tottenham home. So it's really like the next 4, and then he's fine. Again, like, it's a lot of money to bench him because now he's up to like 6.3
Mhm.
six, and there are forwards with better fixtures. At the same time, if you can get through Arsenal and City, the rest of it is fine on paper. Nothing to me is saying he's the biggest problem in my team in
No,
the
not at
immediate
all.
future. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But I stuck with Holland, right? And I plan on sticking with him. So that gives me 2 other forward slots, and I want to move Raul on, and I want to move Wood on. Like I said, it's not urgent, but I think there are better picks out there with better fixtures.
Yeah. To your point, City's fixtures also turn right when Chris Wood plays City away. City obviously have Forest at home, and then they have Crystal Palace, Man United, Aston Villa, and Everton after that. So for those of us like myself that went away from Erling Haaland, maybe that's the time we go back to him. Chris Wood could be the guy you upgrade to Haaland by
Do you have a
downgrading
Holland
elsewhere.
recovery plan, or?
You know what? It's funny. I got on the planner app like a million times because I was missing FPL over the break, and I kept getting to this point in game week 14 where I was like, okay, I'd like to transfer Holland back. It's like 4 moves. I mean, it is
Yeah,
crazy to try and get him back in. Even if I downgrade one of my premium midfielders to Rodgers, like I still have to also touch defender and goalkeeper to get the last couple million to get him in there. So we'll see. But no, I don't have a concrete plan yet. I think I will head that direction after this week. I need to start rolling transfers no matter what. One free transfer right now does not feel good.
no, good point. Well, at least you'll get another wild card here after, like 6 more game weeks.
Yeah, that's true. Last week I did use my wildcard 2 immediately
When
because of injuries in game week 20. That's a great question. What does it say? Do you remember what it says on the site? It's like let's see. Pick team mystery chip info. The mystery chip will be playable from January 2025.
Yeah, so maybe the first week of January, we'll have a fun chip to use that'll distract you from not having more than 2 transfers.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast today, and they were obviously doing like theories on what the chip could be because it's the international break and what the fuck else
There's nothing else to talk
is
about
going on. And somebody mentioned a manager chip, which I have also thought would be fun in fantasy American football, where like you can like get like Pep for like 5 million or something, and you get 3 points for a win and 1 point for a draw, like on your manager.
Sure.
Just to
does he lose points for yellow cards and shenanigans too?
Yeah,
or
yellow cards. Honestly, you should.
how many points would Arteta get deducted for leaving the technical area every minute of the game?
Yeah, we need a manager BPS. So like every time a manager doesn't make any subs before 80 minutes,
Yeah.
it's just like,
Absolutely.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I guess FPL has been using like FPL Challenge as a way to test certain kind of more gimmicky elements, and then based on what gets the most engagement in FPL Challenge, I think like could become some version of a chip in the main game. But I'm assuming they'll do something, I don't know, fairly conservative for this first go around. I will say the 5 free transfers has been awesome. Like that has been a major upgrade this year, and the pricing going into this season was good. So far they're 2 for 2. Hopefully the mystery chip doesn't go kaput. Anyone else on the kind of bad or down end of the fixture ticker you want to chat about before we get into transfers for this week and captaincy?
No, because I think the good assets are pretty well fixture proof, right? Like your Salas and your premium assets. So I'm not super concerned with some of the others, right? I mean, I don't see anyone other than Mbuemo for Brentford, right? That everybody's
Wissa, maybe
Wissa now, I guess. But I don't see anyone else on there.
All right,
get rid of your Spurs assets. I mean, I told you that.
Yeah.
I told you that 3 weeks ago. So
yeah, I think we just like can't. FML FPL said this too. Like, you can have Spurs in your team, you can have Brennan Johnson, you can have Solanke. You just like can't ever captain them because you
Yeah.
have no idea which team is going to show. Like they're still good picks, but I
Yeah.
don't think you can captain them. I thought that was good. That was a
Yeah.
good rule for Spurs.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
All right. Let's talk transfers. You have 2 in the bank this week, and you were discussing Trent and Foden. What are your current plans for those 2?
It all depends on which of these flags go away right after all the pressers. So I'm just kind of curious on who's actually injured and who's not, right? So that'll dictate what I do. I will likely transfer out Alexander-Arnold because if he is on a bad hamstring, he's probably out for 5 to 6 weeks. So that is too much money to have on the bench and not play. And if that's the case, I'm going to move him to an Arsenal defender and target those fixtures, or to Virgil. I think he's a fine like-for-like replacement in that Liverpool side. But I probably like the Arsenal defenders a bit more. Probably go for Gabriel.
Yeah, what's your on Virgil over Kanate? What's your thought process there?
Virgil is the highest scoring defender right now, I'm pretty sure.
I think he is, just Kanate being $500,000 cheaper. I think Kanate probably is, but maybe not like in general ownership, but among the elite teams is probably like higher owned because he started at 5 million. Is VVD, is it like goal contribution you think is worth the extra?
He's got a lot of corner
0.5?
threat. Yeah. I think he's got a lot of corner threat, and he's the guy they go to get him a goal when they're always down, right? He's their captain. So I think if I was going to go to another Liverpool asset, it would probably be him. I think you could get away with going to Connor Bradley and saving some money and investing it elsewhere, but you're going to have a problem like 4 to 5 weeks from now when Trent comes back. So that's my only hesitation there is, that's a future Jace problem if I go that route, because that'll free up budget to where I could probably get to Palmer from Foden at that point. But again, I think you're just asking for a problem. So I'm just going to wait and see how long Alexander-Arnold is out. If he's out for a long time, then I may make that Bradley switch and go up to Palmer and then wild card myself out of that problem whenever I cross that bridge.
Yeah. If Trent's out for a week, you think you would just play Mikolenko next week?
Yeah. If he's only out for a week, I'll hold on to him, yeah.
Okay. And then the Arsenal defense question, I guess I would say same thing with Gabriel and Timber, goal threat between those 2.
I just am not convinced anyone is consistently going to start for Arsenal outside of Gabriel and Saliba.
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I feel like Arteta thinks he's Pep at this point, and he's going to mess around with your Ben Whites and your Timbers. I'm not super impressed with Timber from what I've seen, to be honest with you. So I probably wouldn't go there. I'd probably go more towards a Ben White. But again, I don't know who's starting in the fullback role for Arteta, so that's why.
I will say Ben White was ruled out for 8 weeks, something like that, over the international break. Like if he's not already, he should be like actually red flagged. So maybe some opportunity on Timber if this is a short-term move, but you're right, Gabriel is probably the better long-term pick. And then Foden, it sounds like you're kind of between Saka and Palmer within that spot. Talk to me about that one.
Yeah, so Foden, fixtures are turning for City somewhat, in that they play Tottenham and Liverpool next, Nottingham Forest after that, who have been pretty good this season. We saw they were towards the lower end of the fixture ticker. And I've just not seen anything from Foden that makes me want to hold on to him. Like, I feel like he's just doing more points dodging than he is points getting, and it's just really frustrating for an owner. So I like the idea of downgrading Trent and going to Palmer or to Saka, one of those two, and having, again, 2 premiums in Holland. I feel pretty good about that situation. So,
yeah, fair enough. And you just don't think Palmer's worth the extra change there?
I do think Palmer's worth the extra change if I can get there. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
don't know if I can get there. I got 2 transfers, and again, I don't like. I want to get rid of Wood uh, in 2 weeks' time, right? So I want to have a transfer there in Jimenez. So I don't know that I want to go use 2 transfers off the bat, but we'll like I said, it'll really just depend on the pressers. I think captaincy this week. I don't. There's no one I want to go get to captain, right? Salah at Southampton is going to be my captain.
Yeah.
So I'm not in a hurry to go to one of those.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's flip over to my team and then we'll talk captaincy because I do throw something at you there.
Okay.
Okay, so I think pretty locked in with double Arsenal defense, and the forward line looks okay this week other than Calvert-Lewin. So I'm looking at Sonny out for Bukayo Saka, in to kind of complete the threemium Palmer, Salah, Saka midfield alongside Mbumo and Semenyo. However, I am also considering taking my first -4 of the season, transferring out Calvert-Lewin, who is home to Brentford, and transferring in João Pedro. I was just pulling up Welbeck because of the fixtures, but João Pedro, who's away to Bournemouth and has a really good fixture run. It's I think unnecessary -4 because Calvert-Lewin is home to Brentford, which we talked about. I think is actually a pretty good attacking fixture. But I do think if I'm looking long term at my Holland back plan, one, I need to save as much money as possible. So I think right now João Pedro's the best value pick in the game, 5-4 forward with good fixtures. Two, taking a hit now, as opposed to later, is going to allow me to start rolling transfers, as opposed to spreading these transfers out over multiple weeks and then end up having to take a hit later. So I was thinking about, maybe I just deal with that now. One challenge is that João Pedro plays Southampton next, which is very attractive, but my other front seven have equally good fixtures. Like I kind of have a benching problem, and my bench is not good enough to bench boost in that week. So it's sort of transferring in a player, then I'm going to have to bench a good asset next week, which I don't know that I necessarily want to do for a -4.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I don't know. I don't. I think it's one of those things. It's like one of those FPL gut feelings where everybody's gonna transfer DCL out, and then he's gonna return, just because that's how it works. So I wouldn't be too like dead set on that. That's just kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah.
Like you said, it seems like a needless -4.
Yeah. It gets me, I think, again, one of the best like points per price players, if not the best in the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
It sets up a potential Holland return, but it doesn't in the next 2 weeks, I think, drastically change the amount of points or change captaincy, to your point. So yeah, it's a tricky one. Speaking of captaincy, I think we have a few candidates this week, and I wanted to talk about these with you more in depth. Projected points this week: Mohamed Salah, 7.7; Erling Haaland, 7.2; Cole Palmer, 7.1. Alexander Isak is home to West Ham at 6.1 projected points. Now, if you remember our post-mortem, we said if there are two guys that have similar projected points and one of them is going to be significantly more captained than the other, there is a case to go for the non-highly captained guy. And I think that could be Cole Palmer this week. I'm expecting like 80+% captaincy for Mo Salah. So I think if you get a Salah blank and a Palmer return, that is a pretty large swing
Yeah,
this week.
That's bad for me.
Yeah, yeah. What do you
real
think
bad
about
for
that
Jace.
if you were in my shoes?
Well, if I was in your shoes, I'd captain Palmer. Yeah.
You think so?
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's the point of a post-mortem if you don't listen to yourself? I think it makes sense. I thought you were saying like you were wanting me to make that move for Foden to Palmer because of just to captain him this week, and that's where I'm kind of out on that, right? But if you own Palmer, I think it's perfectly acceptable to captain him. I mean, they're equal fixtures, right? It's Southampton away and Leicester away, so they're pretty much the same exact fixture, albeit I think Southampton is statistically worse than Leicester, but you know, game state wise, I think they're the same.
Salah is coming off of double return, 3 bones. We talked about his bonus points. Palmer is coming off of a couple blanks.
Yep.
And this isn't like early in the season, we had like a Saka versus Holland where they essentially had the same points and the Saka captainers won big on that one relative to this 7.7 versus 7.1 or wherever it settles like by weekend. That's a bigger gap, I think. Like I'd ideally like to be within, 0.1 or 0.2 here from a projected point standpoint. But yeah, I have this sense that Cole Palmer is going to be under captained this week and could be an interesting opportunity as a differential instead of Salah. I'd say the same thing for Holland and Isak too, honestly.
The problem with Holland is you're going to get all those people who kind of sat and forget captained Holland.
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to be competing with those. Not that they're all in the top, 200K, but they're probably more in there than you'd expect at this point.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, if Cole Palmer comes out with 4 goals in the first half, I'm going to be annoyed if I don't captain him. So something I am noodling on this week.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair to noodle on that. I wouldn't blame you for doing it, and I think this is where your FPL bona fides are got, When
you gotta have some stones,
Yeah, exactly. You gotta have the balls to make a move like this. So, again, I don't even know if it's that risky of a move, Chris. I think the numbers all make sense. If you had got both of them, go for the one that's going to be less captained.
Yeah. Yeah, they're close enough that maybe you hit on some variance on Palmer. It's basically what it is. Captaincy at the end of the day is mostly a lottery, right?
Yeah, I think Leicester probably has more goal threat than Southampton, right? So maybe your risk of getting that extra point taken away from you for the midfield clean sheet is lower for Palmer. But like I said, I don't know that should keep you from doing that move.
Yeah. Clean sheet odds: Liverpool away to Southampton 44%, Chelsea away to Leicester 34%. So that does make up some of the point probability delta there as well.
Yeah.
Anything else for Game Week 12 you wanted to touch on?
No, I'm really liking Foden to Palmer, Trent to Bradley move. That still gives me 0.7 in the bank. So I'll probably do that double move if I get news on how long Trent's going to be out.
Yeah. Yeah, Bradley's so tough though, because then he's got to be a transfer out. There's Simicast.
Yeah, but
there
my
as
point
well.
is I got 0.7, so I don't even have to go to Bradley, right? It's just one of those where he could be a differential on that side. And when he does get in, I feel like he's more forward than Trent is at times. So I don't know, just something I'm noodling on. I could go for a 5 million defender also. It'd be just fine. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what news we get during the pressers.
Yeah, Van Dijk, you're right, is in there for defensive points scored. Maybe he is a better long-term pick than I'm giving him credit for, but I will say he's 6.3 now. Kanate is 5.4. You could also get Gavard for the same price, and Dunk is down to 4.4 for Brighton. in their run. That could be interesting as well. All right, I think that's all we have for you for Game Week 12. Just a reminder to rate, review, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your shows. We are on Twitter, now X, and Instagram at FPL_freehitpod. Jace, is it time for us to join Blue Sky? Should we work on that?
Should we look for greener pastures under the blue sky?
Potentially. Look out for that. There's been a movement on FPL Twitter to Blue Sky. I support it. And from what I've heard about the actual platform as well, it seems good. I think it's just a matter of managing our time from posting across a bunch of different platforms. And just a reminder, join us next week. We will recap Game Week 12 and talk Game Week 13. And I believe Game Week 14 is a Tuesday deadline right after Game Week 13. So we'll try and get the podcast out the following week in between there. If not, we'll cover both of those game weeks. So best of luck in Game Week 12, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.